So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. Precisely then, Yeshayahu the 61st chapter and also chapter 1:8, where then the cities are truly returning. And then as far as the world is concerned, and the new system came out on BRICS Post, a very important situation today and yesterday, but particularly yesterday it came out a special group of nations coming up with a very important group of monitoring of ratings. Obviously, the new system is already showing itself very strongly because the world is becoming more aware of the new system coming via computer. So then we find ourselves then studying this section even further, because it's extremely important for us then to have these situations straightened out, because during the time of Daniel we find then a situation regarding then the trade of the end. But the United States obviously must have a link as then a nation despised as then Daniel has placed, because of the last 200 years granted for America, and there is a transition from then America onto the hands of the Chinese. Obviously, you don't have to think very much. The exchange taking place from the USD to the Chinese yuan. So then, as we study this section, it's very important making a link later why the United States will become once again rich. There is only a link via computer prior of its inception, because as far as we can understand, the system as is obviously coming in a very short time, from 24 to 26 months, we will have this system then available for downloading. And then the most important is the percentages. What does it mean then, percentages? It's very simple. Truly, the word of the Creator is not complicated whatsoever, and in fact it is very simple. You then change from a system, existing system of these last couple hundred years, and then you shift to another system, the Chinese system. Then what is important is, because of the last status of USD, it's important US then coming up with this computer, so then the nations can link themselves with their local banks and central banks via the Chinese system, but then the monitoring of those percentages as people they began then to earn and then invest in the Chinese system must have a way of charging taxes, otherwise nations can't stand. So let's understand then this importance, so then later, when then Congo is straightened out via the Soviets, then we can understand even later when then the Second Tabernacle services then is obviously faced with the First Tabernacle service, and then the situation goes on with these that makes then later US richer. But then it's not because of coltan or then rare materials, because of the system. So then, very important having these percentages monitored. When people they link themselves up with this Chinese system, you must have a link with the computers and local banks and central banks when they make the movements of these amount of resources. So it's fairly simple. But thus far what we have then is this new type of system where then the rating companies, they are being joined with other nations, so then indicates a very close proximity of the new Chinese system. So then let's evaluate what this means. We find that in Brazil, India, and South Africa, part of a new global rating agency. But truly, the understanding of these is obviously they have many fears of this new Chinese system, because they can't thus far receive taxes because there is not yet a link established from the Chinese system and central banks and local banks. So then they are trying to scrutinize in a way where they won't start panic worldwide, and obviously won't cause. But because of the fact of the importance of these taxes, then this agency truly is involving then Brazil, it's involving India, South Africa. Also they have a link with Portugal and Malaysia. Truly this is extremely important, because Malaysia is very friends with China, and they have their system very much set up. And then we find closer and closer and closer the system then coming. This was great news. Was then on November the 12th. This news is absolutely as fresh as it can ever get. And then this is going to give you then a section of the new system, and then percentages monitoring. But this is going to become much more personal, as we understand. You can then download in the future in your own computer. But then you have to have these percentages given, so then countries can function. So then obviously when we read then the instructions, they are very much in line with the times and the seasons. And then later we're going to evaluate then the relationship of the United States, and later they become richer because of this system. If we don't have this computer set up by US, then there is a gap when then US then becomes richer later, because of the nations coming together, such as then Kingdom of the East, North and South. They have to have these together via this system, but then the US must earn, and they become richer because of the events and the flow of events, or then sections of the extension of the second beast, as we can understand. And then because of the system, and then because of the seat, as Daniel has stated it, then US will become richer. But then this computer must be set up prior of, or there is no link with it later. There is and must be and must have a link with the system. So then we are going to evaluate these more in details later. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.